welcome to episode 26 of the Barndoor restoration. Last episode I assembled the front frames, got most of the stuff put together. This episode I got the rear frames done up and joined actually the front and rear together. So now it's kind of all one piece. I was originally planning to put the top hats and finish this off completely, but I decided not to do that and to actually join the frames together instead. The reason for that is I found a photo, a promotional photo of one of these chassis, which looked just like this, but with the control tubes in it. So before they put the top hats and the cross members and stuff in, they run all the control tubes, and then they just set the top hats down over the top of them, which makes a lot of sense. So I'm going to do the same thing. It'll be easier. This tube is quite stiff. I have the correct thickness and size tube, so it'll be much easier to bend it and lay it down and then put the top hats on. So a little bit of the frames. The rear frames are basically the same as the front. It's a C-channel with a lip on the bottom. It's 1.9 millimeter, approximately 14 gauge. Has a torsion beam crossed here, welded in. And then the transmission mount in the middle of that. The other end of the transmission mounts on these two horns that come out, and then a loop in here. And the way they're originally assembled is the torsion beam, center casting, and the two tubes are welded together. These horns and this loop was put together, and then the inner frame panels were put on. And these are welded from the back side around these tubes, so that's where you can tell those are put on first. And also the cross member was spot welded in to that inner piece. And then after, the frame rails with outriggers were slid on, and then spot welded around the lips, top and bottom, and then welded around the outside of the transmission hoop and the torsion beam. And then after that, the outside torsion beam plates are welded on. Oddly, the torsion beam plates on this bus are actually clocked 4 degrees. This one here is up higher than that one. So I guess they weren't terribly accurate with them. I was quite surprised to find that out. I assumed they would have had a jig to do that with, but obviously not, or not a very good one. And the joint in the middle, because the front frames are parallel and the rear V-out, they actually had just a welded joint. And barn doors, this might have extended into the post barn door buses, but I'm not sure. I know the later, like my 64, doesn't have this reinforcement plate. So at some point they stopped it anyway. So this reinforcement plate is the same thing as the frame. It's 1.9 millimeter. Shaped like the frame, but fits inside. And then it had spot welds on the outside. There's 10 spot welds on each side of the weld, at least on this truck it was. 4 on each side of the weld on the top. I couldn't tell from the bottom because mine was too rusty. I assume there was probably like 6 on each side or something on the bottom. Then it had 4 little strips of weld on the top. There's 4 strips of weld on the bottom. I didn't put those on yet. I'll wait till it's on the rotisserie to do those. And then a little strip of weld on each side of the diagonal. And then they welded right around the frame. So when I put this together, when I built these plates, my original idea was to put the 2 bends to make the channel that slid in there, and then use a hammer and dolly to thin the metal, and there's a 4-degree bend it needed. So thin it till it made the bend, or till it started to bend, and then put it in the press and just add that little kink in it. I got about 2.5 degrees and decided it was too much work. My arm was getting sore. Trying to stretch that 14 gauge with just a hammer is a lot of work. So I ended up just putting a relief cut. And only I put the relief cut in about halfway. And then I put it in the press and it just stretched it the rest. And then just welded in that cut again. And the same in the bottom, I just put a slight relief cut. But then I had to bend the lip on after. So if I was doing this again, I would have bent the short bottom lip first and then the other 2 lips. Then put the relief cut partway through both of them, bent it, and then welded them in. Would have been much faster. Anyway, once they're done, I plug welded them in. So I added 6 plug welds on each side of the frame, and then some in the 4 on the top on each side. And then so I plug welded it all in, smoothed the plug welds off, and then I welded in with the to make it look original, the original type of welds in it and in the round. And then I went over to the spot welder and added in the spot welds so they show up. And I made sure there was a really good layer of zinc paint inside the frame and on the back side of that plate to try and keep it from rusting like the originals did. So the back section, I had to replace the section of the inner frame. So from about here back are new. And then of course the outriggers and the cross member. So the first thing I did was I clamped up everything and then fitted the outriggers. So they're on a bit of an angle because the frame is at 4 degrees. So the lips are slightly offset and angled. And I wanted them set there perfectly because I was putting them on before the top hats. With the top hats, you could clamp them to the top hat and then weld them to the frame, and they'd be in the right spot. But I wasn't really doing that because I wanted them to be like free supporting. So I adjusted the lips on all those to make everything fit perfect. And I marked the frame so I could drill for the plug welds. So similar to I did the front, I plug welded, drilled for the plug welds on the sides and also up through. Now the front outrigger just has a very short lip that goes underneath, and that's so it doesn't interfere with the beams that come back from the front suspension beam. There's 2 arms that come back. On the back, they have a lip that goes in under probably about 24 millimeters and 4 spot welds. So I did 2 plug welds on each of those. And it's kind of important because the jack point's on here. So when the jack is pushing up, it's actually pulling on that bottom lip that's under there because the side flanges can flex. So that bottom lip keeps it. So there's quite a bit of strength in that. So once everything was drilled, I media blasted all these parts, put a layer of zinc on them. Clamped things up, clamped the outriggers on, plug welded them in, smoothed the plug welds off on the inside, and then I spot welded them to give me my factory look. I then clamped the inner panels in and the cross member, got that in the right spot, and I just added a little bit of weld on the inside to hold it together. So I could take it out and spot weld the flange in. Now I didn't think about it at the time, but this inner panel is also 14 gauge, same thickness as the frame. The front inner panel is only 16 gauge, but these were 14 gauge. So then I was thinking spot welds might not be as strong as I wanted because it is holding the frames from flexing. So I don't know if I videoed any of that, but I actually took and drilled from the back side after it was welded together. Drilled the back side of the inner plate and then plug welded them for strength. Anyway, once that was done, made sure there was a good layer of zinc inside the frame and on the inside of these panels. Set it up in place, clamped it, and then I welded the seam, so the inner panel together on both sides. Then I plug welded them because I wanted to make sure this was nice and flush. And then once that was welded, I clamped it better and then plug welded everything in. Smoothed the plug welds off, and then again went over it with the spot welder. I'll do the bottom again when it's on the rotisserie. I uploaded drawings for all this to GrabCAD. I should mention that the drawings I'm uploading are based on this chassis. And this is a April 54. It's actually April 13th 54 is when it was manufactured. And there's a lot of variance just side to side in this one. I'm sure there's a lot of variance between barn doors. So the spots in my drawings are probably going to be off measured against other ones. Little things like, for instance, this tab here is bent 50 degrees on this side, or 30 degrees on that side. I had another one around here, and another one I had, another truck was bent different angles again. I'm assuming they tried to do 45 and just kind of did it by eye and didn't care. So there's a lot of details on these that may be different. And also the way the welds, I'm describing the welds. I described the welds in this front. I've had a chance to see some good photos of a January 54. And there's spots, it had spot welds where this one did not. And this one had a strip of bead weld on it, where this other truck did not have any weld. It probably wasn't a production change. It was probably just whoever was welding it up that day. They probably didn't really have a lot of quality control when it comes to how things are done. So there's probably the things I described might not be the same on other buses. So I guess that's about it for this episode. Next episode, I'm going to do all the control tubes. So these run front to back to run the cables through. If you want to see that, please subscribe so you don't miss it. Keep watching for video of the work being done, and also some video of the details of this. So I guess that's about it. Well, thanks for watching.